everybody. I got some I got some wise words for you this morning. I'm gonna give it just a few minutes here for some people to get online. Ain't nobody on just yet. And the word I got to share today is real important. So if you'll just bear with me just a little bit. Good morning, everybody. Everybody, good morning. Just gonna wait just a little bit here for people to gather. I got a wise word that I want to share. The how a compromise led to a preacher having a shootout with the cops. And I know that sounds a little odd. You don't normally hear about preachers having shootouts with the cops. Um, but in this case, it did happen. It happened to a good friend of mine, and his name is Nick. He's no longer with us, as you might imagine. But Nick was in prison, and that's where I met him at. We did a little bit of time together back in the late 90s, early 2000s. I was a teenager, and they sent me to prison for a crime I did not commit. But this ain't about me. This is about him. So we'll save my story for another day. But Reverend Nick is what they called him when I met him. I first met him at Cross City CI. And never have I ever met anybody with such a strong foundation in the Lord as Nick. He was powerful. He was in touch with a higher power for sure. I see I got a few people who have joined me. Is everybody able to hear me okay? If so, leave me a comment and let me know that you can hear me just fine. I got a great story to tell you this morning, true story, about how a preacher man got in a shootout with the cops. So give me just a second. I'm going to get just a little closer here, and I'm going to tell you this story. This is a true story about my best friend. So I met Nick in the chain gang back in the early 90s, early 2000s. We both did a little bit of time. And as I was saying before, they sent me to prison for a crime I didn't commit. This ain't about me though, so I'm just going to keep the story focused on him. So anyways, Nick was powerful. He was in touch with God. I'm telling you, I had never met anybody in my life who had a stronger walk with the Lord than Nick. Nick did not break any rules whatsoever at all. And he worked in the chapel. And and being in the chapel, well, hold up one second. Let me just pause for a second. I want to draw a comparison. I knew this other dude, completely different guy. His his nickname was Preacher, and he would make a show of being a Christian. He would he'd stand up at the edge of his bunk, and he would pray real loud. He would make a show of reading the Bible every day, and he wanted people to call him Preacher. That was his nickname. And this one particular day, he had applied for a job at the warehouse. And in the warehouse in prison, that's a coveted job, because anything and everything that comes into the institution comes through the warehouse. So it's a great place to be able to hustle and bring in contraband. If you wanted to smuggle something into the prison, they would have it shipped in, and the people in the warehouse go through it first, and before it ever goes to its end destination, the main unit, the laundry, the kitchen, maintenance, wherever. And the guy who worked out there was crooked. He stole all the time. The sergeant, he stole all the time, and all of his people stole. And preacher went out there for a job interview, and the sergeant asked him. He said, "Man, do you steal?" He said, "Oh, no, sir, no, sir, I don't steal, not at all." He said, I'm a man of God." He said, "I don't steal anything. You don't have to worry about me." And he said, "Well, I don't need you then." He said, "Everybody work out here steal." He says, "I steal. Everybody who that works out here steals. And if you don't steal, I don't need you." And preacher instantly, he flipped the script and he said, "Man, I steal everything that ain't nailed down." He said, "Whatever it is you want to disappear, I'll make it disappear." He says, I, I, I'm a professional crackhead. Man, I'll steal everything. And just like that, the dude lost all of his integrity, all of his credibility, everything. Because when he got back to the dorm, the people who was out at the warehouse had told the story. And from that day on, everybody laughed at him. And, and they could instead of calling him preacher, they started calling him a professional crackhead as a way to mock him. And I'm in a joint. You come across a lot of people who hide behind the Bible uh, under jailhouse Christians. Maybe just while they're in there, or they be a Christian, they go to the chapel just for protection, or something like that. That wasn't Nick. Nick was not like that. Nick was solid. And he was probably one of the kindest and most compassionate dudes that I ever met. And he worked in the chapel as an orderly. and and anytime you're new in an institution, you spend the first week in orientation. And Nick was the one who did the chapel orientation. So anybody who came, um, I see some people here are on and they're saying hello, and that's great. So hello to everybody. But anytime that people would come in for orientation, Nick would be one of the first people to see him, and he would always share the gospel with him. Well, there was some um, Muslim dudes who was kind of upset with Nick because Nick had caught a few of their young members, young Muslims, as they was getting off the bus, and when they came into the chapel for orientation, he had talked to them about Christ, and they had switched religions. They had left Islam and they had converted to Christianity, and that had upset some of the elders in the Islamic community there in the chain gang. And Nick was out on the rec field one day, and they had, and about two or three big black guys, Muslim guys, had come up to him and they pulled knives on him, right? Like homemade shanks or whatever. And they had pulled them on him and they said, "Listen, if you continue to talk about Jesus to people in our community, we're going to kill you." And listen, when you're a white dude and you're in prison and two, three, four big black dudes come to you and they pull knives on you and they tell you that they're going to kill you, that's pretty intimidating, right? And a lot of people wouldn't respond to that real well. But Nick, man, he wasn't intimidated at all, man. He just looked at him. He said, "Look here, gentlemen." He said, "Before you ever get to me, you're going to have to get through each and every one of these angels that the Lord has encamped around about me in charge with my safety. I'm not worried about you." He says, you do whatever it is you need to do, and I'll continue to preach the gospel to anybody that'll listen." Man, he had this boldness about him. And nothing ever come to him. No harm ever come to him. And I say all that to let you know this dude was real. He was solid. There was no room for compromise in his life at all. If you had something going on with you personally, if you had a prayer request, if you had a need, everybody knew they could go to Nick, because Nick would pray for them. He would pray with them. He'd pray for them. He'd walk the yard with you. He'd talk to you. He'd counsel with you. Um, and it didn't matter if you was white, black, Asian, gay, straight. It didn't matter who you was, where you come from. Nick would take time for you. And I'm the son of a preacher. I've been in church all my life, and I've never met nobody as strong and as grounded and as solid as Nick. So, but then Nick got the work release, and Nick was married, and he was married to a Christian lady, and they would do prayers together. They do Bible studies together, all these kind of things. And and Nick had got to a work release center that was kind of lax in the visitation park, and the officers would leave and give the inmates about 30, 40 minutes of private time with their loved ones in the visiting park. And Nick and his wife used to go off in the bathroom, and they would do the he and she thing, right? And Nick began to justify it. Oh, that's my wife. It's allowed. It's not a sin. It's my wife. And I had never known Nick to break any rule at all, even the smallest of rules. He wouldn't break them. And I was shocked when I found out that him and his wife was going into the restroom doing the he and she thing. And because it was him breaking a rule, whether it was justified in the Bible with his wife and all that was a whole nother subject. He was still in prison, and it was still breaking the rules. And Nick never broke rules. And this represented the first time that I ever seen Nick compromise his beliefs. And he wouldn't look at it like a compromise of his beliefs because he justified it. But it wasn't long after that Nick got out. And Nick, he was out for a little bit, and I heard Nick say a cuss word. And I was like, wow, I've never heard that before. So he went from breaking the rules and justifying that, sleeping with his wife there while he was still locked up, to now he was cussing. And it wasn't long. Nick, despite all the good that he was a little bit arrogant, and he was a little difficult to be around at times. He was real hard-headed. And his wife eventually got tired of all that, and she divorced him. And Nick went crazy, man. He started chasing women. And, man, he was sleeping with women here, and he was sleeping with women there. And he was cussing, and just little by little by little, his walk with the Lord began to degrade, little by little by little. And I went over to his house one day, and he was drinking. And I was like, wow, what is going on with you, man? And he got involved with this lady who was just a real no account, man, no account. And she would do things to taunt him. Um, he was in love with her, and she'd go off and see other men, and she'd send him pictures of her with other men just to aggravate him. And he got all inside of his head, and he was at work one day, and he threatened to shoot up the whole place. They called the cops on him. They put him in a mental hospital for observation for 72 hours. And man, how I couldn't help but think how the mighty have fallen. You know, this once great man of God who stood up with boldness underneath death threats and proclaimed the gospel, is now in a mental institution under observation because he was threatening and to shoot up his work. Well, he got out of the mental hospital and he decided he had had enough of this girl. This girl he was with used to tell him that she was sleeping with his boss, not Nick's boss, but her boss. And whether she was or whether she wasn't, I don't know. But she would tell him that she was. So Nick got a gun one day, and he had all of it that he could take. And he had went to her house and laid in wait in the bushes. And it wasn't long. A truck pulled up, and it was the girl he was seeing and her boss. The boss was driving. He was picking her up and dropping her off. And Nick jumped out the bushes with the gun. Bam, bam, bam. And he shot the dude, right? And got the dude out of the truck. He put the gun on the girl. He made her drive um, while he held the gun on her, and she was driving out in traffic, and she was afraid for her life, and she wrecked the truck in a ditch, flipped the truck over, and she jumped out and started running down the street. A passerby seen it, stopped the car, let her jump in the car. And Nick got out of the wrecked vehicle, out into the street with his gun, and started shooting at the car. Bam, 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 bam. Right? Well, you know, when you act like that, they're not going to let you live, and they're not going to let you stay free. I mean, you're going back to prison. That's all there is to it. And it wasn't long. A few hours later, there was a manhunt, and it wasn't long. There was a few hours later, and they ran up on Nick in a Burger King parking lot, and they gunned him down, and they killed him. And this was the early morning hours of August 8th, 2020. And August 8th was Nick's, coincidentally, it was his birthday as well. So he lived and he died on the same day. And I always think about Nick for two reasons. One, he was my best friend, and I remember him before he went crazy. I remember him when he was a strong man of God. But I also think about him in the sense of compromise. I remember when he lived a life with no compromise. And he let in one little bit of compromise, and he justified it. And from there, it just began a snowball effect downhill. And the point of all this is to let you know the devil is not looking for a full surrender. He's only looking for a compromise. If you're battling demons, if you're battling addictions, there's no room for compromise in your life. There's no room for compromise, because compromise or sin will take you further than you ever wanted to go. It'll cost you more than you ever wanted to pay, and it will keep you longer than you ever wanted to stay. There's no room for compromise in your life. If you have left a life behind and you're no longer that person, you can't stop and look back. If you used to drink and you no longer drink, you can't get upset. You can't have hard times in your life and just go have just one beer. You can't go back to that life and do just one more hit, smoke one more joint, or do whatever it is you used to do that you have walked away from. There's no room in compromise. There's no room in your life for compromise, because it will tear you down. It will destroy you. And I've watched it happen to the mightiest of people that I have known. No matter how big, no matter how strong, no matter how bold you are, if you allow for compromise in your life, it is like a cancer, it is like a rot, it is like a disease, and it will steal your life from you. Folks, I encourage you today to be vigilant, and stand strong. From everything you've left behind, leave that in the past and do not look back to compromise. If you'd like to read more about my life and how I got to be here, if you'd like to read more about Nick, this here is my autobiography. It's two books in one. The first is called The Jungle, and the second is called Serial Entrepreneur. It's on my website, markwcast.com. Right, you can get you a copy. It's hardcover, soft cover, and ebook. But I bring that story up because I believe we all die twice. I believe we die the first time, the day that we quit breathing and our soul leaves our body. I believe we die the second time, the very last time that our name is mentioned. And Nick was my best friend. So every August 8th, which is his birthday, as I said, I like to talk about him. I like to mention him because I remember him for all the good that he did. But it's also a lesson. If you've left a lifestyle behind, you cannot look back because compromise will destroy your soul. I'm going to take a few minutes here and read the comments. I got a bunch of people saying hi. I appreciate that. Looks like I got some people on here who are cracking jokes. That's okay. Somebody asked if I go fishing. No, I don't. Um, Somebody says nobody cares, but at least they took the time to watch and leave a comment. So I appreciate that. Somebody says, "What religion are you?" I am a Christian. Um, um, wow. So evidently, my live stream today has upset a few folks. I got a lot of people on, or I got one guy on here. I don't know about a lot of people, but I got one guy who has taken the time to watch this live stream and tell me how much I suck. That's great, man. I appreciate you. God bless you. All right, I am going to sign off.